Hey y'all, and welcome back to Leonard Creek Farm. Hey y'all, I'm doing two videos right now in one, but this video is going to be for our Gardening for Beginners video. And in today's video, I'm going to talk about distance between planting. I'm going to show you how we do it, and I'm going to talk to you why it's essential that you put some distance in between your plants when you're planting them. So right now in this video, we are planting our beans. We've done planted our pole beans. I hope you all can hear me over the wind. And right now, Andy is over here planting our bush beans. So we're going to start right here in the pole bean area. As you can see, we have trellises on either side. This side is three 16-foot panels of cattle panel or hog panel, whatever you want to call them. Over here is two panels and then a half of one on the end. And so, if you notice, I'm going to kind of stand on this side. It's 2 arms length between each panel. And I'm going to explain to you why we do that. So essentially, all plants need air. They need airflow to get through the plant in order for the plant to be healthy. A lot of times when you see pole beans that are being planted too close together, they start dying more quickly. They don't produce as well. And you see on the bottom of the plant that they start dying on the bottom, and it just kind of rises up. So if you're going to do pole beans, we recommend that you do 2 arms length between the panels. Along with that, when you're planting your pole beans or your beans, any bean, essentially you're going to want to do them at least 1.5 to 2 inches apart. All right, guys, so we are standing in the bush bean area. If you notice, he has taken a hoe and hoed out straight lines through here. I'm going to show you how we do the straight lines, and I always say it's because he's a perfectionist, but it's a wonderful thing to do for the garden. That way you can measure them out really well. So as you can see here, we have a stake on this end, and you probably won't be able to see it up there, but there's a stake on that end. 2 reasons why we do that is so that we can make the rows an even distance apart, and I'm going to show you the amount of distance that we use. We split the rows up evenly throughout the garden. We also do this so that the rows will be straight. The straightness of the rows is not as important as the distance in between, but it looks a lot nicer. I'm going to go ahead and show you how we determine the distance between the space between our beans and how close we plant them together. So as you can see here, he's got it staked here, but you can see the rows and the distance apart from them. And I'm going to show you how we measure them apart. So guys, this is our garden hoe. If you notice on this hoe, we have a blue tape. I'm in the way. We have blue tape. The blue tape is the distance between one row to another row. Let me grab the camera and I'll show you. The blue tape is the distance between the center of this row and the distance between the stake on this side. So if you can see there, Andy's pointing out with his foot, it's blue tape.
That's the width of our rotor tiller from the head to this blue tape.
Yeah. So, hold on, the camera's getting wonky on me. So we space the rows, all of our rows out with the forethought in mind to space them out so that we can get the rotor tiller, the tiller in here. That way we don't have to hand till as much or hand weed out in the garden as much. We can run that tiller up through the rows. So as you can see here, we can run the tiller up through the rows a lot easier. So we do that with the forethought in mind to space them out in the garden. Just like these beans that we're spacing out here, we're going to space our corn out the same way. We're going to space our peppers out the same way. We're going to space our tomatoes out the same way. They're all going to be the same distance apart throughout the rows. That way we can get that airflow, that good airflow in, and of course get the tiller in to make life a little bit easier on us. We're getting ready to get rained on. We were planning on planting the garden, but we might not get everything in like we were liking. But I wanted to go ahead. I told you all that I would show you, or I would tell you the distance in which you plant the beans. I'd already mentioned that you want to do about 1.5 inches to 2, it's thundering, 1.5 inches to 2 inches apart. And the reason for that is to essentially do, like we're doing with the distance of the stick, you essentially want to allow the plants to breathe and to air out. Now, if you want to plant them a little bit thicker, you need to keep in mind that you're going to have to pull the extra up. Don't leave them in there. That's how you contract some diseases. That's also not going to allow airflow to your plants, and it's going to keep your yield a lot smaller. Planting more doesn't mean a larger yield. If you're planting them on top of each other, it's not going to give you a larger yield. It's just going to give you more of a mess to have to clean up, and you're definitely going to get a lot less fruit. As you see here, he's got 3 rows spaced out. This is going to be our corn. Now I want to go ahead and give you a tip here. A rule of thumb, our rule of thumb, most people's rule of thumb, is for every 1 row of corn you plant, you have to plant a second one. So if you're going to plant, as you can see, he's got 3 rows marked off here. There's the first row, this is the partner row. And so here, this is this row, he's marking off a 4th row. So for every 1 row, it needs a second row. And I'm not going to get into it in this video, but it's essential. They need it for pollination, and they need it to go ahead, and male and females need to go ahead and do their thing back and forth in order for you to have corn. I'm going to space these out with the correct distance. So we have used our marker like I showed you all previously when we planted those rows, and we've added about probably 4 inches to that. That way we can get in here. Corn, obviously you're going to need a little more space. So not only is the width between each row important, but also the distance in which you plant your seed. So we have to plant ours super thick, but if you don't have any issues with critters and things getting your seed, you probably won't have to plant it as thick. We usually plant, typically we're going to want our seed, typically you're going to want your seed, and we will pull up the extra plants and just kind of move plants around if there's a sparse area, because like I said, we've got to share it with the critters. But you're going to want them anywhere between 4 to 6 inches. Now you can read online and it usually says 8 to 12. But we're working with it in some tight quarters here. And so we usually do the plant separation anywhere between 4 to 6 inches, and we find that satisfactory. So when you're planting your seed, you can do anywhere between 4 to 6 inches. Or you can go with the recommendation of 8 to 12 inches. But usually we find, like I said, anywhere between 4 to 6 inches being right on. Now we do plant, like I said, thicker. So when you're looking at it, I don't know if you can see. You probably can't see it, but we're planting it a lot thicker than that. But we do plan to come out here and pull up extras and fill in spots that the seed did not germinate in. So
we got a lot of crows here. They wiped us out last.
Yeah, we do have a lot of issues with critters, and like he said, the crows wiped us out last year. We had an entire corn patch here, and they just demolished it and ripped everything up. We also have problems with rabbits as well, and at our personal kitchen garden, we have problems with moles. So, everything loves corn. Everything loves corn, and so they usually get into the corn. And so we really do have to plant it pretty thick, way thicker than I would typically recommend for anybody to plant. All right, guys, so I want to kind of show you how we space and distance ours apart here. If you're looking, you can kind of see where we put a hole for each. We're doing 3 feet, about 3 foot between each tomato. So if you're wondering kind of what a good distance is, that's essentially what we do. We do 3 feet between each tomato. I've been saying it throughout the video, but it's the same as I mentioned for the peppers as it is for the tomatoes, or the green beans as it is for the tomatoes. We have found that you can put the peppers a little bit closer than 3 feet, but it is very important that you put those tomatoes at a good distance, because they're not going to yield as much fruit. They're going to have a lot of diseases on them, and they're not going to get the air they need if you don't put them about 3 feet apart. Okay, guys, so I kind of explained how we were planting the tomatoes 3 feet apart. We're on 3 feet apart. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4 rows of tomatoes, and we're getting ready to plant the peppers. He's getting ready for the peppers here, but I wanted to show you kind of what I meant by the distance from the ground here. So if you notice, right here is the tomato plant, how we don't have any leaves touching the ground. The distance between the leaves from the stem to the from the ground is very important. If you have leaves that are touching the ground or close to the ground, you need to rip those up because that's going to be very attractive to diseases touching your plant. You also want to keep leaves not from touching the ground. That way that the air can come in and circulate underneath those tomatoes. They need that in order to produce. They need that to grow. They need that to keep disease down. It's very essential. You can see it there. You can see it in the next one. It's very essential to keep those leaves off the ground for airflow and to prevent disease and blight from getting on your plants. So we talked about the spacing between the tomato plants, how they need airflow in the bottom and stuff. Peppers are a little bit different. We do not space peppers as far as we space tomatoes. As you can see here, we've got tomatoes about 3 feet apart. We're planting peppers about 2 feet, around 2 feet. Now you could pull those bottom leaves, but it's not really essential. I haven't found it to be essential to pull the bottom leaves. For us, peppers are pretty easy to grow. I feel like for most people, peppers are pretty easy to grow. But there they are. You just want to make sure, if we're talking about the distance, like I said, we're planting them about 2 feet apart. You also want to make sure from the, whatever's in the front row to where the peppers are, you want to have walking room and breathing room for the plants. You do not want to smother, anything. All right, guys, we've talked about spacing between tomatoes. We've talked about spacing between peppers. We've talked about spacing between beans, 2 different types of beans, pole bean and bush beans, and corn. The last thing we're going to talk about is spacing between zucchini type plants, bush type plants, and summer squash. Right now, just from our seed, we only had 2 zucchini survive, Ford Hook zucchini specifically, and summer squash. We have 1 summer squash. So we're going to go ahead and plant these. Now the distance between what I'm going to plant them is about 3 feet apart. They are a bushing plant, and summer squash especially gets, kind of wide and large. They're, kind of bush out. They're not huge, but they are kind of large, and we do want to have some space in between them. I've got 2 Ford Hook zucchini, like I said. I'm going to go ahead and plant them in the front here. I'm planting them kind of in an extra spot we have. This is the last of the planting for the day. We've finished our peppers and our tomatoes, which was last. Like I said, I'm going to plant these about 3 feet apart. Alright guys, thank you so much for watching. I hope that you all kind of got a grasp of how important it is to distance your fruits and your veggies, and how important it is for the plant, but also how helpful it is for you as well to go ahead and distance some plants out. It's a lot easier to weed. It's a lot easier to get in if you're distancing your stuff good distance for you to get in. I know that not everything is quite turns out exactly what you were wanting, but we do try to get it as close as possible to where the health of the plant is not jeopardized. Guys, I appreciate y'all watching, like I said, and if anybody has any tips to add or to cue in here, then now's a good time. I'm sure others will appreciate those comments. But guys, I thank you all, and hopefully we can see you on the next one. We'll see you later. Bye.